My mother-in-law smiled while she served me dessert, and a few hours later, I woke up in a private hospital room with an IV in my arm. The door was slightly open, and I heard her whisper outside, asking if I had really eaten enough. Then my sister-in-law laughed softly and said that by morning, everything I owned would belong to them. My name is Clara Whitmore, and for 34 years I believed hard work could protect a person from almost anything. I was wrong. Hard work can build a life, but it cannot protect that life from people who sit at your dinner table, call themselves family, and secretly study the fastest way to take it from you. I grew up in rural North Carolina with a single mother who worked nights at a gas station and weekends at a church donation shop. We never had much, but she taught me how to stand on my own feet. I earned a nursing scholarship, worked emergency room shifts, became a nurse practitioner, and later opened my own home health agency from a cheap laptop on my kitchen table. My company, Willow Creek Home Care, started with 1 patient and 1 borrowed filing cabinet. Within 5 years, I had 20 employees, 2 vans, and contracts across several counties. We helped elderly patients after surgery, managed medication, arranged physical therapy, and checked on people whose own families rarely called. I knew every dollar, every client, every late-night payroll problem because I had built it all myself. Then I met Ethan Caldwell at a rural health fundraiser. He was calm, polite, and interested in my work in a way most men were not. When he introduced me to his family, I thought I had finally found the warmth I had missed growing up. His mother, Marlene, welcomed me with perfume, pearls, and homemade bread. His sister, Tessa, smiled sweetly, though her eyes looked me over like I was something being priced. 6 months after our wedding, Marlene invited me to lunch and suggested that I move my business assets into the Caldwell Family Trust. She said it would protect me, simplify taxes, and keep everything under one strong family umbrella. I told her gently that my agency existed before my marriage and would stay separate. Her smile remained, but something cold moved behind her eyes. That night, Ethan repeated her words while we washed dishes. He said his mother understood money and that I should not turn her help into an insult. I told him I had already said no. He went silent in that heavy way people do when their loyalty has already chosen a side. That was the first time I felt it. The invisible rope between my husband and his mother. The next warning came through our joint account. $12,000 disappeared in one transfer. Ethan said Marlene needed it for a short property closing. 2 weeks later, another $5,000 vanished. He acted as if asking permission to spend our emergency money would have been inconvenient. I opened a private account, moved my business income, and left only household money in the joint account. Soon after, a certified letter arrived about unpaid taxes on one of the Caldwell commercial properties. When I pushed Ethan for the truth, he finally admitted the family real estate empire was collapsing. Empty buildings, overdue loans, unpaid taxes, almost $1 million in exposure. From the outside, the Caldwell name still looked polished. Inside, it was cracked and sinking. That evening, Marlene called me in her soft church voice and asked for a temporary loan from my business accounts. She kept saying that family shares burdens. I told her no, clearly and finally. There was a pause long enough for me to hear the change in her breathing. Then she said they would find another way, and somehow it sounded less like disappointment and more like a threat. A week later, at Sunday dinner, I became violently sick after eating Marlene's mushroom risotto. No one else got sick. The urgent care doctor called it a stomach virus, but my years in emergency medicine told me to document everything. I wrote the date, the food, who cooked, who ate, and who did not get sick. I hid the note in my office drawer. After that, Ethan started asking strange questions. Was my business bank account only in my name? Who had access if I became ill? What happened if I could not make decisions? I checked my old legal documents and found something terrifying. If I became incapacitated, Ethan had emergency authority over my medical decisions and business operations. When I signed that paperwork years earlier, it had seemed normal. Now it looked like an unlocked door. Then I found the forged document. Ethan had left his work bag on the hallway bench, and while looking for a charger, I found a folder inside. It was a new medical power of attorney with my name on it, giving Ethan broad authority over my care, money, and business if I became unable to speak for myself. At the bottom was a signature that looked almost like mine. But I had never signed it. I photographed every page, replaced the folder, and lay awake beside my sleeping husband that night, realizing the man I married was carrying a key to my life that someone had carved in secret. The next morning, I met my friend Audrey, a hospital pharmacist. She told me someone had called asking for my medication history, allergies, and any record of mental health or cognitive problems. Audrey told me to get a lawyer immediately and to request baseline blood work while I was healthy. I hired an independent attorney named Madeline Pierce, who listened without interrupting. She changed my trust, removed Ethan from all authority, replaced him as emergency business manager, challenged the forged document in advance, and created a dead man switch. If I missed a check-in, she would file everything. Then came the email. Ethan left his laptop open, and a message from Marlene appeared about an emergency conservatorship timeline. It described their plan in steps. Get me admitted to a hospital. Present the forged document. File for emergency control while I was too sedated to object. Move my accounts and business under the Caldwell Trust within 48 hours. I sent screenshots to Madeline. For 5 weeks, I lived like an actress in my own house. I smiled at Ethan, answered Marlene's calls, changed passwords, moved money, completed new legal filings, and got clean blood work. I cried once in my car outside the hospital, not because I was afraid, but because I was grieving people who were still alive and still pretending to love me. Then Marlene invited us to an anniversary dinner. Just 4 of us, she said. Family only. I knew this was the night. Madeline activated the dead man switch. Audrey promised to contact the hospital if I was admitted. I charged my phone, packed a sealed water bottle, saved emergency numbers, and drove to the Caldwell house in a dress that made me look calm. The table was beautiful. Candles, china, roasted chicken, soft music, and Marlene smiling like a woman hosting a celebration instead of a trap. I avoided wine and drank from my own bottle. She noticed, but said nothing. After dinner, she brought out tiramisu, claiming she had made it because it was my favorite. I had mentioned that once years earlier. She had remembered for this moment. The first bite tasted sweet. The second carried something bitter and flat under the coffee flavor. Marlene watched me the way a person watches a timer. I ate enough for the lab to find it, then smiled and told her it was wonderful. 20 minutes later, nausea hit me hard. My hands went cold, my vision blurred, and I locked myself in the bathroom long enough to text Madeline that symptoms had started. Ethan drove me to the hospital while Marlene followed. At admissions, they called it food sensitivity. Marlene demanded a private room, and the hospital gave her one. I drifted in and out while she moved through the hall like she owned the building. My phone sat in my purse beside the bed, close enough to see, too far to reach. At 2:07 in the morning, I woke to voices outside my door. Marlene asked if I had taken enough. Tessa said I had eaten half the plate, and that by morning everything would be theirs. Then Marlene said Ethan needed to present the paperwork before I fully woke up. I kept my breathing slow until they walked away. Then I reached for my phone and typed one message to Madeline. Execute the plan now. By morning, Madeline was sitting beside my bed in a gray blazer with 2 folders and a laptop. When Marlene, Tessa, and Ethan walked in, they froze. Marlene asked who she was. I told her she was my attorney. Madeline explained that the forged power of attorney had already been challenged. A restraining order was active, police reports were filed, and none of them could touch my accounts, home, or business. Marlene tried to soften her voice and say I was confused from medication. I told her I had clean blood work from 2 weeks earlier, and that a full toxicology panel was already running on the blood drawn after dinner. The room went silent. Tessa broke first, crying that Marlene had said it was only something to make me sleep. Ethan lowered his head and said almost nothing. Marlene stood tall and asked how I could repay the family this way after everything they had given me. I looked at her from that hospital bed, with wires on my chest and an IV in my arm, and I told her family does not drug family. For the first time since I had known her, Marlene Caldwell had no answer. The toxicology report found a sedative in my blood that was not prescribed to me. Police took my statement, collected the forged document, the email screenshots, my baseline labs, and the hospital records. Marlene was arrested the next day. Tessa cooperated and testified. Ethan accepted a fraud charge and a permanent stain on his name. I filed for divorce before I left the hospital. The Caldwell properties were sold to cover debts. Their grand house went to auction. My company survived untouched because none of it had ever reached their trust. 6 months later, I signed a new hospital contract and hired more nurses. I changed my locks, planted tomatoes, adopted a gray cat, and learned to sleep without listening for footsteps in the hallway. My mother told me later that quiet women are often the ones paying attention. She was right. I was quiet, but I was not blind. I learned that people who repeat the word family the loudest can sometimes be the ones who require the strongest boundaries. One forged signature, one poisoned dessert, and one text message changed my life, but they did not end it. They gave it back to me.